Hey there, guys. Welcome to Camp on the Hill. Thank you for watching this episode. I asked that before we get into things, please go ahead and like this and go ahead and share this. We want to get this message to as many people as possible. I'm happy to have you guys here tonight. Just got done with a cross-country road trip. You may have seen some of those videos. I shared them. They're called Thoughts from the Road. Check them out on Facebook. Just kind of some of the stuff I was meditating over a long trips on the road, a lot of driving. There's some good stuff in there, but just some exciting news real quick, guys, at least on our end. We are right now, let's get the logo behind me here. You guys have seen that on my hat and the logo behind me here, the banner. We're right now in the midst of creating a new logo. We're kind of just completely rebranding the entire look of Camp on the Hill, and we're also working on a website right now to be able to get all of the content, whether it be the videos here or some of the podcast episodes that maybe you've listened to over on Spotify. We're going to get all of that in one place online so that when things happen, like these videos getting flagged, these videos getting taken down, these videos getting censored, that you have a safe place where you can go and check out all of the Camp on the Hill information, and we have a place where we can get things out without the fear of being shut down. So we're working on that right now, and that's super, super exciting, and I'm really pumped for you guys to see the new look that we're going to be debuting really soon. But all that behind us, I want to get into tonight something I'm calling this Exposing the Globalist Elite Agenda. Exposing the Globalist Elite Agenda. And if you've been paying any attention to our world, if you've been paying any attention to the news at all over the past 2 to 3 years, 2020, 21, and now 22, if you've been paying attention at all to the news, you have gotten an inside look into the globalist elite agenda. You've seen what their playbook is, but a lot of people just don't. You see it, but you can't put it into words. My goal tonight is to be able to break down what you've been seeing over the past 2 to 3 years and show you what the agenda is, what the exact playbook is for the reconstruction of America from the globalist elites. And basically what it boils down to is something that we've seen from totalitarian and authoritarian regimes throughout history, right? If you want to fundamentally change a society, if you want to take a nation from what it is now and make it into something fundamentally different, completely different, you have to push radical change. Most people are okay with little bits of change at a time, but when you want to push radical change and you want to do it in a relatively short period of time, you have to first create such chaos in society that would then justify the need for such radical change. If you want people at large, the majority of society, to accept the radical change you're going to begin imposing in the society in which they live, you have to first either capitalize on a crisis or create a crisis to then justify the need for that radical change. That is what we've seen throughout history from totalitarian regimes, from communist regimes, some socialist regimes, and that is what you and I have been witnessing the past 2 to 3 years in the United States of America. And so as we sit here right now, as you're watching this video right now, we are about 2 to 3 years, at least in the United States. Other parts of the world are a little bit further along than us. We here in the US are about 2 to 3 years into the Great Reset. And if you've been watching any Camp on the Hill for any amount of time, you've heard me here talk about this before, the Great Reset. And I'm telling you right now, if you've never heard of the Great Reset, as soon as you get done watching this video, head over online. You can even go onto YouTube and check out the World Economic Forum's YouTube page and just do a little bit of digging into the Great Reset, or go to worldeconomicforum.com. It might be .org. And check out their page on the Great Reset. It's something that they're very open about. The World Economic Forum is a nonprofit based out of Davos, Switzerland. They were established in the 70s by a man named Klaus Schwab, and they've been working for decades now at this point with financial leaders, economic leaders, business leaders, and heads of state from around the world, working on different issues like climate change and human rights and all these different things. But about 3 years ago now, right about the time of the beginning of COVID, they launched something called the Great Reset Initiative. And if you've not heard of the Great Reset, just a quick kind of to sum it all up in a sentence, these people, these globalist elites, again, heads of state, heads of business, big tech, financing, these people, the ones who kind of are, it's a whole nother thing we'll get into in another video, but people that believe that they are above and better than everyone else, the ruling class, the elite class, if you will. We're talking about your Jeff Bezoses, your Bill Gates, your Joe Bidens, Obamas, Clintons, people like that. They have launched this thing called the Great Reset Initiative. And basically what it is it's a rewriting of capitalism. They believe that free market capitalism does not work, that there's too much risk associated with free market capitalism. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what they mean is they don't have enough control over what you're doing with your money and over what you're eating and over what's going on in your house, over what you're watching. They want to track everything. And so we right now, all right, this is not something that is far off. You and I are 2 to 3 years into it. There are some countries around the world, I was listening to a report actually today, that there are some countries who have actually fallen because of the Great Reset. The Great Reset, in a nutshell, it has many different facets to it, but the whole goal is to bring a nation's economy to its knees, to cripple the nation's economy so that it can be reset. And ultimately what that means is it's taking away that nation's economic independence and bringing it into economic dependency upon a global market. And that's what's happening right now around the world. Right now, here in the US, we're about 2 to 3 years into it. And if you remember what I said just a couple minutes ago, anytime you want to create radical change, you need a crisis. And isn't it interesting, right? Because normal Americans, they hear about an idea like, wait a minute, you want to take away our independency? Like we wrote the book on independency, baby, July 4th, 1776, and you want to take away our independency and you want to make us dependent on other nations and on a global market? You want to make us dependent? We're America. Americans wouldn't go for that. But if you hold off on telling Americans what you want to do, and first you insert a crisis, and then maybe another crisis, and then maybe another crisis. You so overwhelm people with day-to-day bad news. You so overwhelm people of being in crisis mode. We all know what it feels like to be in crisis mode. And every once in a while, we have to be in crisis mode. But we weren't created to live in crisis mode. That's not created. We weren't created to be sustained in that mode. All right. So isn't it interesting? All right. I was looking up some things on this. Isn't it interesting that ever since the Biden administration took over at the beginning of 2021, not that long ago, year and a half ago, isn't it interesting that ever since they took over, we have seen crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis that didn't exist just a year before when the Trump administration was in. What are some of these crises, you may ask? First, ever since the Biden administration took over, we've had the January 6th crisis. Now, you know, if you've been watching Camp on the Hill, you know exactly what January 6th was. January 6th was an absolute sham. It was something that was planned and orchestrated by the left to hijack what was happening on January 6th. And if you want to, I'm not going to go into details here because I've done numerous videos on that. So check out some of the videos to get some of the details on that. But we all know what January 6th was. January 6th was their hope was to be the nail in the coffin against Donald Trump, that this guy would be absolutely ruined after January 6th. And here we are a year and a half later. They still haven't ruined him and his reputation. They still have not deterred people who think that he won the election, who know that he won the election, and they still can't let the thing go. It's falling apart. If you guys have watched any of the January 6th hearings, these people are desperate. They're pulling stuff out of thin air, just trying to make stuff up. Even saying at one point that, Trump dove to the front of his limousine and put his limo driver in a chokehold because he wanted to get back to the Capitol to help storm the Capitol with all of his followers. They're reaching people. I mean, so far so that they're indicting people, and people think this is so much of a joke that they're not even showing up to the hearings. They have no fear. So we've had the January 6th crisis that's been shoved down our throat. We have a financial crisis that we are in. We have a fuel crisis that we are in. We have an energy crisis that we are in. We have a border crisis that we are in. We have a gun crisis that we are currently in. And this isn't even mentioning what's been going on with Russia and Ukraine. But isn't it crazy? Ever since the Biden administration took over, none of these things were here. A year before that, when the Trump administration was in power, none of those things were here. We didn't have a January 6th crisis and insurrection, which again, it's hard to pull off an insurrection when nobody there has a gun. But we didn't have a January 6th crisis. We didn't have a financial crisis. We didn't have a fuel crisis, an energy crisis, a border crisis, or a gun crisis. We had none of these. But ever since the Biden administration took over, we've had one after another. Financially, we have seen hyper inflation because we spent the past 2 years printing money like crazy and sending it overseas and sending it to people in our own country to incentivize them not to work. I know people that made more money during the summer of 2020, 2021. They made more money being on unemployment than they did by going to work. So they didn't work. They're just banking, saving up $10, $20, $30,000. I mean, it's crazy. So because of all that, we are now, I was listening to a guy yesterday saying we are headed into not only a recession, but a severe recession. Even though the White House currently is saying, oh, we're not going into a recession, we're not going into people that know what they're doing, people that know what the markets are actually doing right now are saying, they're singing a much different tune, that we are headed into a severe recession. So that's a financial crisis. The J6 crisis, we already talked about that. The fuel crisis. We've been seeing rising gas prices. That's what happens when one of your first orders as president is to shut down American oil and getting rid of 50,000 American jobs, getting rid of free oil that's right under our feet, which, by the way, the United States has enough oil under our feet to last us for the next 400 years. And instead, we get into foreign oil deals. And who did we get into foreign oil deals with? Isn't it interesting that we get into deals with countries like Russia? And then after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we say, all right, we're done. We're putting sanctions on you. That didn't hurt Russia. You know why? Because all Russia said was, all right, you want to put sanctions on us? You want to try to cripple our economy? We're going to stop trading and we're going to stop selling fuel based on the American dollar, and we're going to start doing it on Russian currency. So Russia is now moved away from the American dollar. All right? And countries all over the world have been doing this because they see the instability of the American dollar. And so we have gas prices shooting through the roof. We're on the West Coast a couple weeks ago when I did my Thoughts from the Road videos. And, you get out to the West Coast, you see prices, $5, close to $6 a gallon. That's a lot. And it's projected to go higher. So we got a fuel crisis. We got an energy crisis. There's a lot of talk about the power grid, and can the power grid survive everything that's happening right now? They're talking about blackouts, and that's been going on for quite a while now. People saying there's a crisis coming with our power grid, with our energy. The border crisis. Listen to this stat right here. All right, so illegal immigrants, because we have a completely open border right now, have been flooding the American system. Check this out. This is from the Attorney General of Texas. All right, and this is just recently from the Attorney General of Texas. He said that Texas, the southern border of Texas, has seen a 279% increase of influx of illegal immigrants from 2020 to now. 279%. Gee, what did they have in 2020? Man, isn't that when they were still building the wall? And isn't that when we were still sending illegal immigrants back when they were caught at the border? Yes, but since we flung the doors wide open, a 279% increase. And that's just in Texas, guys. That's just in Texas. That was the Attorney General of Texas with that. So I mean, this is crazy. We've got a gun crisis, and I want to focus on this for just a second, right? We're seeing, again, it's interesting, right? Whenever Democrats are in power, you tend to see more mass shootings. Does that mean more mass shootings are happening? Possibly. Does it mean that more mass shootings are getting reported on and thrown in your face 24/7? Absolutely it does. And that's what we've been seeing. And every time something happens, every time a shooting happens, what do? You hear the Democrats or the Republicans, it's the elitists, the left-leaning people in our government that happen to be on both sides of the aisle. They get in front of the camera, and what do? They call for more gun control, greater gun restrictions, when the Second Amendment, my friends, says that you have a right to bear arms specifically for the purpose of defending yourself. You have a God-given right to be able to defend your life and the life of your loved ones. And isn't this interesting? Yeah, I just thought this was really interesting. Take a look at Uvalde, Texas. Take a look at a shooting that took place here in Ohio recently at a mall. Isn't it interesting that all of these shootings, they do have some commonalities? And one of them is they tend to be young kids, right? 18, 19, 20, early 20s. And when they dig into the kid's background later on, they say, man, this kid was disturbed. So it's young kids who were disturbed. But then these young kids who are fresh out of high school, don't even have a job, are mentally disturbed, not really thinking well, yet they're showing up with thousands upon thousands of dollars of elite weapons and ammunition. Something's not adding up right there. Kids that don't have a job, fresh out of high school, don't even know how to fix an engine, yet they're showing up with elite weapons, thousands of dollars of them when they show up at these shootings, thousands of dollars of weapons and ammunition and gear, and they know exactly how to use it. Just ponder on that for a second. Where are they getting this money? Where are they getting these weapons? Where are they getting the ideas to go into these places with all this weapons and shoot these places up? Something's not adding up here. And I heard this just the other day. So in Missouri right now, and I'm going to make sure I try to get this right here. In Missouri, I was listening to an interview with, I think it was the Attorney General of Missouri the other day, and he was saying that the FBI is going door to door and basically requesting to see private citizens' guns. They want to see, they're going door to door and requesting to see your guns. And they're saying, hey, if this happens to you, ask them, do you, kindly, respectfully, do you have a warrant to come in? Is there a reason? Do you have paper, actually a warrant? Do you have a court order here of why you need to be in this house? And if you don't, please leave and don't come back until you have a court order. Because our federal government, all right, just clear this out for a second, because I know a lot of us, right, it's been a while since we've been in history, or we were in history, and we went to a public school that was government funded, and we didn't really get a whole lot of a good education. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution says that you have the right to bear arms. Why? It was originally, and still is to today, to protect you as a private citizen, that the federal government has no legal authority to come to your home and ask to see your private weapons. They are yours. The Second Amendment was placed in there to protect you from the federal government. So just like, was it Ronald Reagan who said one of the most dangerous things you could ever hear is, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. If they show up at your door, you tell them, do you have a warrant? Do you have a search warrant? Do you have a court order to come into my home specifically for what you're saying? If you do not, leave my property and do not come back until you have it. Simple as that. In Missouri also, the FBI said, I believe it was August 1st, they were going to begin coming around to different sheriff stations, different local precincts to check CCW records. Who in those areas, in those counties in the state of Missouri is on file for concealed carry. Again, illegal. The federal government has no right to do that. Now, when you create a crisis or an emergency, we have a gun emergency in this country, that begins to change things. But it is illegal for them to do that. And the AG of Missouri sent an open letter to the FBI and said, stay out of my state. FBI, you are not coming to the state of Missouri. I also heard that the same thing is happening in Delaware. So around the country right now, the federal government is overstepping, way overstepping. You just don't hear about these things on mainstream media. So we have a gun crisis, right? And so we've got all these crises that have been created by the Biden administration. And I was listening yesterday, this is interesting, I was listening to Glenn Beck yesterday, and he was interviewing Bill O'Reilly, and they were kind of talking about some of these things. And Bill O'Reilly said, there's these theories out there. Everyone thinks that all of these things are intentional, and I think that's crazy. I don't think these things are intentional. I just think these people are incompetent. Now here's the deal. You could sell me on our current administration being incompetent. They are. I get it. You could sell me on them being incompetent if we had maybe just a financial crisis, if we had maybe just gas price a little high, but all of these things, to have the J6 crisis, financial crisis, fuel crisis, energy crisis, border crisis, gun crisis, the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, sending billions of dollars to the fourth most corrupt nation in the world without anyone actually overseeing the money. And we're sending billions of dollars into this corrupt nation that has been corrupt, where there's been a lot of corrupt business dealings going on for years. If it was one of those things, two of those things, two, you could sell me on incompetency. There is no way, though, that all of these things are happening because people are incompetent. These are intentional moves being made by very intelligent, very strategic, and very power-hungry, more immoral and evil people. And I didn't even mention the final two: a climate emergency and a health emergency. You might have heard of these. So the White House right now is actually toying with the idea, not toying with the idea, I mean, they're openly talking about it, of declaring a climate emergency. There's a quote here. This is from the White House website, and this is a quote directly from Joe Biden. He says, "In the coming days, my administration will announce executive actions that we have developed." This is concerning what they are calling a climate emergency. Joe Biden, in his, this is a speech that he gave the other day. You can go read the speech on the White House website. And he quotes one of the health officials that he's getting his information from as saying, in America right now, we are at a code red. We are in a code red situation, and the Biden administration is getting ready to announce executive action in declaring in the area of declaring a climate emergency. And they are also talking about declaring possibly a health emergency specifically for monkeypox, which is super interesting. You guys know that monkeypox, what we found out at least so far, is spread primarily through the gay and bisexual community. Yet we need to declare a health emergency for a virus that is spreading through 4 to 7% of the population. I would just say, if there's a crazy virus spreading through the gay and bisexual community, don't be gay and bisexual engaging in that kind of activity. Probably the best way to stay away from that. That's according, by the way, to the Washington Post, that they're talking about. Washington Post had an article up about the health emergency and monkeypox spreading through gay and bisexual community. And so why do we have all these things? And this is what I'm getting to, and I'm wrapping it up right here. Why do we have all these things happening right now? Why do we have crisis after crisis after crisis after crisis? One, it's because they are trying to create radical change, so much so radical change, because each one of these things, it's going to give the federal government more and more justification for taking power away from the hands of individuals, because what they're going to say is, look, with power in the hands of individuals, we've got all these different crises: financial crisis, fuel crisis, energy, border, gun, climate, health. We need to begin to seize that control, and they're not going to word it that way. They're not going to use words like seize or take, but it gives them justification in the eyes of the public to begin taking more and more and more control. And it's control that comes out of your hands and out of my hands and goes into their hands. So that's one reason, because they want more control, and they have to be able to justify to you why you should be handing that control over to them. But two, and this is the really interesting part, and if you watched my Thoughts from the Road videos, this is starting to expound on that. I said just 2 weeks ago in one of my Thoughts from the Road videos, I said, the Democrats and the globalist elites, they are absolutely terrified about what is about to happen in November in our midterm elections, because what's going to happen and what everyone's predicting and what we've been seeing, because all of these crises, because people have seen, wow, I didn't necessarily like the guy who sent out mean tweets, but my goodness, the state of our nation and the state of our world was in a crap of a lot better state than it is right now. We've seen nothing but crisis after crisis, and I can't even pay my bills. Most people are saying like there's a lot of, I think I heard 50% of Americans right now are having trouble paying their bills. People want this guy out. People want this administration out. People want Democrats out, and people want Republicans that are rhinos, Republicans in name only. They want these people out. They want, on both ends, Democrat or Republican, if you're an establishment Republican, an establishment Democrat, they want you out because they want people. The people want to put people into positions of power, specifically in the House and the Senate, who are going to put America first. We are going to see an absolute red wave. And isn't it interesting? People are saying, oh, people are so focused on Donald Trump. When's he going to announce his run for presidency? He keeps teasing it. He keeps teasing it. When's he going to announce it? And people have been so focused on, is he running for president? When's he going to announce running for president? That they haven't noticed exactly what he's been doing now for the past year and a half. Ever since he's left the White House, he has been doing nothing but touring the country from city to city, from state to state, back and forth, from coast to coast, and from north to south across this great country. And he has been holding rallies with thousands of people, endorsing candidates locally, at the state, and at the federal level, endorsing the people that he wants in there and endorsing the people that the people want in there, that the American people want in there. And my friends, I'm telling you, in all of these elections that are happening leading up to the midterm, his endorsements are winning. His endorsements are winning in an unprecedented way. Again, you're not going to see this on mainstream media, but if you do some digging, his endorsements are winning unlike anything we have ever seen in this country's history. We are about to see such a red wave. And when I say red wave, I'm not talking about Republican. I'm talking about men and women who are patriots and are about to take this nation back. And the left right now and the globalist elites are absolutely terrified of this. The reason, one, they don't want to lose power. But two, what's going to happen when this red wave occurs? What's going to happen when all these establishment Republicans and these establishment Democrats who've been lining their pockets with your money and doing evil, immoral things, what's going to happen when they get ousted and when true patriots get into their positions of authority? We're going to see the establishment of commissions and subcommittees right away that are going to start investigating the true story behind things like January 6th, the true story behind things like the attempted kidnapping of the governor of Michigan, the true story behind what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and where all those billions and billions of US dollars have been going. They're going to start looking at the true story of what's been happening in the 2020 election and all the evidence of fraud that's come out since then. The left and the socialist, the globalist elites are absolutely terrified that they are about to not only lose power, but then get exposed for all the crimes that they have committed against you. That's right, you. Treason against the United States of America and against you and against me. And they are absolutely terrified of this. Therefore, they're going to do everything they can. I talked about a couple weeks ago in my video. They're going to do everything they can to throw us into chaos before the November elections, so that you can't vote in person again, so that so that there's a distraction. That's what they do, right? What we've been talking about here is exposing their game plan. If you've watched the last 2 to 3 years, you've seen their game plan. Throw things into chaos so that they can control the narrative. That's what they're trying to do right now, specifically with all these different crises, and now the Biden administration announcing a climate emergency and a health emergency possibly going into action, where basically if that were to occur, Joe Biden could declare executive action, declaring these emergencies, he could take executive action and he could overstep all the legal rigmarole in Congress and everything. He could just do what he wants in certain areas. They're trying to seize control, and they're trying to throw us into chaos before November, and they're not going to start October 31st for something that happens a few days later. They're going to start now so they can have a narrative. So what do we do about it? One, you and I need to be praying. We need to be asking God to expose these people for who they are and exposing their plans. Don't even let the plans take shape, Lord. We ask that you would expose these plans, God, that you would expose them in such a way that not only more and more people see it and call for change, call for action, but that the legal minds would wake up and see these things, and these people would be brought to justice, all the way from the White House to the State House to the local level. The people that have been screwing over you and me for the past 2 years, that these people would be exposed and would be brought to justice and stripped of their power. Number two, you and I need to get involved. It's good to pray. We need to pray. We also need to get involved. Remember, prayer is always led to drive to action. It's asking God for his action, but oftentimes when we pray, what we're praying for is, Lord, I don't know which direction to take. Then God gives us the wisdom and expects us to act. It's time for you and I to act, guys. The next 3 months in our country could get a little wild, but it's time that we bring the wild. It's time that we bring the wild against those that have been trying to destroy this country from the inside out. Voting, do I vote? Do I not vote? Not an option, my friends. This is a non-option election. You must vote. This is even more important. This midterm election is more important than the 2020 presidential election. We have our opportunity to take things back. So guys, this is our time. It is the time to act. It is the time to get involved. It's a time to talk to your church about it. That's a big thing. Christians, talk to your church. Talk to your pastor. Ask for your pastor's ear. Ask to have a meeting with your pastor. Ask to have a few minutes on a Sunday morning to talk to your congregation about the importance of voting, to talk to your congregation about what's been happening in our country. At my church, I've started an entire class that I teach every other week. We spend about 2 hours every other Wednesday digging deep into the very things that we talk about here on Camp on the Hill. And we're talking about action plans and how we can get involved in combating the evil that is going on in our country. Do that at your church. Do that at your church. More and more pastors are beginning to wake up to the need because they see the writing on the wall. And they recognize if we don't act now, we're not going to have a country. So guys, this is our time. Love you guys. Thank you again. Please like and share this video and be on the lookout very soon for our new logo that we got coming and some gear we're going to get printed up, some new Camp on the Hill gear with the new logo on it and the website coming soon. Love you guys.